Alright, busia for me titi obi bia na me nsa mo obi bia akwa ba emfambra enkasa ti bia busia for eye John Dramani Mahama and the whole day press conference. Na busia for journalists for be ekopie mu ho na omo busa no questions be na ye busa no question ba kwa eye John Dramani Mahama ntimi enyi sa question no. Ye busa no say oba be di Ghana so that why president da ade bia na opese oye bia no nya chance ade nti na opese Ghana sa to aba e de man bi no sa a big president a very good question. Nebusia for a answer no de enya asem kuta wantimi any question no anu ye. Jebe ni kuti nsem no munchie mu ne answer a John Dramani Mahama. Edito abonti. Mess also be subscribe to my channel be like na do adwenche so. A good comment section kama.
Your Excellency, my person, my country. The decline is Fourth Republic. Yehun Rawlings, Yehun Kufuor, Yehun Professor Mills, Yehun Da, Abedi Mampeni. It sounds like Yente Bibi Fufrubia. I say Yehuna Yasanko DH, the Yateda Nana, what can I say? Then Pana ya at the Fufra, we second coming, no. Who Ghana for Yehun DH.
Mr. President, for your questions and also your commendation. This will not be a 9-day wonder. Everybody knows that when I was president, I held media encounters, every year of my presidency. It's not been the same under this government. They've run away from the searing accountability to the media. We all know that Chapter 12 of our Constitution is on press freedom. And it has been one of the most progressive constitutions that any African country can have, because it gives wide-ranging freedoms to the media to be able to do its work, and principally to carry out their role as the watchdogs of the people, not as the guard dogs of government. Some of us have abdicated that role, and instead of being the watchdogs of the people, we have been the guard dogs of government, savaging people who question and try to hold government accountable. So we must take note of that. Safety of journalists is important. And I must say that in this last administration, journalists have felt more afraid. They have felt more cowed. Many journalists have been harassed. They have been forced to flee the country. I remember a journalist had to run to South Africa and stay there for some time to let things cool off before he returned. Another journalist in the Upper East region who questioned some issues to do with illegal mining also had to run away from the region for fear that he was going to be assaulted or harmed. I remember Ahmed Swali and his murder, assassination, which up till today, government does not seem to have the political will to let the investigations go forward and bring the people who did this to justice. As long as these people are not brought to justice, the possibility exists that they can do something similar in the future. And so these are things that we take seriously. And my track record when I was president is there for everybody to see, that because I'm a colleague of yours, my training is in the media, and so I can empathize with the work you do. And so definitely you can be sure that as president, I'm not going to condone or conspire to harass journalists when they do the work that the Constitution has mandated them to do. We're willing to sit with you and look at any laws that are in contradiction with the Constitution. The Constitution is the overarching law of our country. And so if there are any laws that are punitive and constrain the media from doing its work, there are laws that we can look at and we can amend if necessary. The low salaries are not only the state-owned media, they are even worse in the private media. They are even worse in the private media. And so it's something that we need to attend to. The thing about media is that it is driven mostly by adverts. Unfortunately, things have gotten worse because businesses are suffering currently. The budget for advertising has shrunk. And also because of the number of media that we have, dividing that little budget amongst the media makes it difficult to be able for the media owners to be able to guarantee bigger salaries. And so even in turning our economic fortunes around and bringing the private sector back onto the path of growth and growing our economy would create a bigger pot for us to be able to give more advertising to media houses so that they can improve the salaries of media people. But in the meantime, if you remember, we set up a media development fund. There were a few challenges at the time, and so we put it in abeyance for the meantime. But I think there is something that we can look at again. Set up a media development fund. Government puts seed money into it. It was meant to improve training of journalists. It was meant to attend to welfare of journalists and so on and so forth. And so it's something that we are willing to reactivate. And together with the GJA and all the other media umbrella groups, we'll sit down and see how this media development fund can inure to the benefit of people in the media space. And so those are all things that we are willing to look at. The other question was...
So on the exchange rates.
Yeah, on the exchange rates. The immediate issue with the exchange rate and the economy is that the best signal Ghanaians can send to both domestic and international investors is that we're ready to change the current trajectory on which we are. I think that if we hold a successful election, we demonstrate to the world and our people that we are willing to change this trajectory on which we are, that is leading us further into the abyss. It will restore confidence in the economy. That in itself will send a signal that stabilizes the foreign exchange. Currently, nobody has hope in where we're going. And so people are hedging because of the rate of deterioration of the value of the cedi. People are hedging for other foreign currencies. And when it happens like that, then it puts further pressure on the currency. And so we would instill fiscal discipline, because eventually the main driver of the economy is fiscal discipline and fiscal consolidation. And so if you only want to ramp up revenues, but you're not willing to cut expenditures, then you have a situation where your budget deficit is out of kilter. And as you know, we had a budget deficit that went as high as 15% of GDP. And unless we instill fiscal discipline, we'll continue to have a situation where it puts pressure on our currency. It's like a household budget. You cannot spend more than you earn. And that is what this government has been. Spending more money than they earn, borrowing more money than they can afford to pay. And that is what has, created the situation in which we are. So we must reduce the deficit, we must instill fiscal discipline, we must reduce the debt burden, and already there is a debt restructuring going on, and so we must continue the debt restructuring, but make sure that we put in the buffers so that we don't fall into this situation again. In my administration, we set up what we call the sinking fund. And we capped the stabilization fund. So any excess money that was above what should go to the stabilization fund went into the sinking fund. We also committed other revenues into the sinking fund so that we could anticipate debts that were becoming due and pay them. This government came and depleted the sinking fund and did not replenish it. And that is how
we are ready for you.
15 years saw their taps flowing for the first time. Today, I'm sure your taps flow twice a week or something. If you don't store water,